Hey y'all, it's gonna snow tomorrow, which is pretty early for us and pretty rude, but I've been trying to prepare this week. So I'm gonna take you along as I plant some roses in the ground and protect some tender perennials and also do some work on my sunroom because it turns out I'm gonna need this oasis sooner rather than later. Let's get into it. I was able to get some of my roses planted in the ground already, like this Princess Charlene de Monaco, and she looks really happy since I got her in the soil instead of in a pot. I planted her here in the sitting corner because she smells great and she grows tall rather than wide, so she's not going to scratch anyone. But yeah, look at the difference in the healthiness of the new growth versus the growth that came in a couple of months ago. It's like night and day. So I'm really excited to be getting these roses in the ground so they can reach their full potential. The next rose I'm going to plant today is my Honey Dijon, who was really a superstar for me this year. I don't know that any rose bloomed more than her. Now, next season, I am going to be putting a couple more of these raised beds along the fence line here. So I'm planting the Honey Dijon a foot or a foot and a half in front of those. So she will have room to grow and I will have room to work in those beds. My husband is normally the one who does the hardcore digging around here, but he's busy today and I could use a little exercise anyway. So let me give it a try. I'm getting these roses in the ground now because they are hardy to my zone, which is zone 6B. But if I leave them in containers all winter, chances are they will freeze and die because their roots won't be protected the way they are when they're in the ground. The rule of thumb is that if you're going to grow a rose in a container, you should choose a rose that is hardy to 2 zones colder than yours. And of course, I learned that after I bought my roses, but it's okay. They're going to be much happier in the ground anyway. Once you get more than like 6 or 8 inches down in the soil in our yard, it's pretty heavy clay. So I'm going to make sure that when I put this rose in the ground, I plant her with a bunch of compost to make sure she has something to push into as she spreads her roots. I'm using plenty of my favorite mushroom compost from the local garden center, and then I'm gonna stomp everything in to make sure it's all settled and ready for the rain to come water it in. Now I'm gonna plant another one, and as I struggle to dig through this very rocky clay soil, I'm gonna take you inside and show you some of what I did on the sunroom earlier this week. I was a little overwhelmed when I started in here just because there's a lot of plants and there's a lot to do. But I decided just to start with this one wall. So I'm clearing out all the plants, the humidifiers, the cables, all the random stuff that has somehow ended up back there. And then I'm going to give it a good clean. We had a friend install this really pretty curtain rod that goes all around the room earlier this month, but it left things a little bit dusty. So I'm going to take care of that dust and I'm going to clean these windows. Now these windows, I love them. They're beautiful. They're original to the house, but they were kind of holding on by a thread. So our friend also took some time to restore those windows for us and do a lot of reglazing of the panes of glass in the frames. So the glazing that he applied is still drying. And once that is all cured, he's going to come clean the outside of the windows for us. And so I want to have the insides of the windows nice and clean so that when that happens, we are getting the maximum amount of sunlight in this room. Then I'm going to give it a quick sweep to get rid of the dust, a quick mop to freshen up the wood floors, and then we're going to be ready to bring in our new little IKEA console and start putting some plants on it. And the next day before getting started, I went outside to soak up a little sun and warmth because I got to get it while I can. All this is going to be gone soon. So blue. Then back inside to get back to work. I'm putting together the second one of these IKEA consoles, and I really like these little pieces of furniture. I feel like having these two consoles together is going to look a lot more intentional and cohesive than all of the random plant stands put together that just looked kind of messy and leggy to my eyes. Plus, I'll have a lot of storage on these lower shelves. And I feel like the style of these goes pretty well with the wood trim and with the other furniture in the room, like the chairs and that painting and my rainbow table. It's all kind of contemporary, a little bit retro feeling. And yeah, I think it'll go really nice together. Plus, you can fit a lot more plants on one continuous surface than you can on a bunch of individual plant stands. Now I can put this into place, and the fun part, start loading it up with tons of plants. It's looking pretty good. So let's go outside now and take care of some of my babies who aren't going to make it through the winter without some sort of protection. First up, I have a few more of these hydrangeas that I planted in terracotta that I want to move into plastic pots. This way, the terracotta won't freeze and thaw and eventually break around them. And they'll be a little bit lighter to move around, so I can make sure I'm getting them some protection from the elements when it starts to get really gnarly outside. This bougainvillea was just stunning all summer, but she is looking a little worse for the wear now. And although she would be massive and take over the whole garden if we lived in California, we live in Pittsburgh, and she's not going to make it through the winter if I don't get her out of the elements. So I'm going to trim back some of these branches and get her ready to take to our unheated garage. I have always wanted to have big hanging ferns on my front porch. I feel like it's so classy and it looks so pretty with the light filtering through them and their fronds waving in the breeze. They're not winter hardy in my zone though, and a lot of people just buy new ones every year, which I may very well end up doing, but I'm going to try to keep these alive. I'm going to put them in the garage for the winter. They'll be protected from the elements there. It won't freeze there. We'll see how they do. As I was taking this first one down, I remembered there were some birds that made their home there this spring. So I'm going to get that little nest out of there before I take these down and bring them to my unheated garage, which is about a half a block away from the steps up to my house because it's underneath our deck. It's a little bit of an odd setup, to be sure, but I think it's a really great space for us to have for our plants because most of the garage is underground, and that means that it's not going to freeze down here. It's probably going to stay like 40 or maybe 50 degrees all winter, and that will be just perfect to let these plants go dormant, but not let them freeze. And I'll come down and check on them a couple times a month and give them a drink and what have you. While I was working today, I got an exciting delivery. These are window inserts. You know that vinyl stuff that you can put on the inside of drafty windows, like with a hairdryer to keep the wind from blowing through? This is very similar, but it's in a frame that's surrounded with foam, and they make them to order. You give them the dimensions of your windows, and they make them for you, and then you can just pop them right in. I think this is going to make a huge difference because our windows, like I said, are over 100 years old and a little bit drafty. So this is going to really help it stay warmer and cozier in the sunroom this winter. And as you can see, it's taking me about 2 seconds to pop them in. At first, I wasn't sure if I measured right or if they were going to fit, but there's about a good 1/2 inch of foam all the way around the edge of the frame. So you really can just nestle them in there and it's a perfect fit. And honestly, I could feel a difference the instant they were seated in the frames. They are going to make a huge difference. I can just tell. Now that the window inserts are up, I can get on to another fun part of this project, which is making use of that curtain rod that we had installed all the way around the room. I'm just going to hang a hella plants up here, and I'm speeding you through this right now, but trust, I took my time. I really enjoyed the process of figuring out which plant should go in which planter, where exactly it should hang, how high it should be, and yeah, just really finessing this and making it look and feel just like I wanted it to. Since this is a south-facing window, I'm trying to put plants over here that aren't going to mind a good bit of sunshine. It is the winter. It's not like they're going to get blasted by all-day strong sun, but I don't want to put like a pothos or a fern in this window because the sun might be too strong for them. And I am going to actually add some grow lights to this room as well, but one step at a time. So I gotta say, this was a really good time for me. This was a great way to spend an afternoon because it scratches a really interesting part of my brain. The visual part for sure. I am trying to balance out the heights and the sizes and the weights of everything, make sure that the plants that are hanging are not running into the plants that are reaching up. But I'm also thinking about what the plants want. So some of these plants are going to like the full sun. I've got some succulents up here. I've got a zigzag cactus up here. That's going to be great. But some of these other plants, especially the ones that I'm putting down on the console, some of them actually like to kind of be in the understory of another plant. So I'm thinking about a lot of things at once here, and it's very much a process of trial and error. I put a plant in, I take the plant out, I put another one in its place, and eventually I end up with a result that I like, that hopefully the plants will like too. So I'm taking this one plant stand out and I'm bringing in this other one that has a little bit of a lighter footprint, and I'm liking how that looks. So I'm going to leave it, and I think I'm going to put the other one on the other side of the rainbow table. Now I've got a little bit of cord management to do, style up the shelves, do a little bit of tidying because I kicked up some dust and tore off some leaves in the process of doing all this work. But yeah, I think that this is where I'm going to call it for this week. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about where we ended up this week. It's looking great in here. I love the curtain rod, that vintagey gold color, and all the plants that it lets me hang. Plus, I love the window inserts. They're going to make a huge difference to the coziness of this room once I get them all in. And the console looks amazing. And I love all the storage I have underneath it. I'm not going to have a whole bunch of crap sitting on my table anymore. And since you hung out until the end of the video, I have a couple of little fun bonus things to show you. Look at this adorably random assortment of flowers that my garden is still giving me here in November. There's some little green zinnias, a couple of big orange ones, tons of snapdragons, and look, even some pretty little white dahlias. I couldn't be more pleased about this, and I think there's still a few more to pick before the season's done. And look what I did to my living room, y'all. This is giving me so much life, and I can't wait to tell you all about it next week. So don't forget to subscribe and come on back to see how we finish up all of these projects. Have a good one, my friends. Bye for now.